Guys, and welcome back to a brand new video here on the Doggle channel. Today we are talking all things Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, one of the most loved games in the entire Assassin's Creed franchise, and we're talking about it 16 years after its original release date. If you don't already know, my name's Doggle, and I've been playing through the entire Assassin's Creed franchise for the very first time this past year. Now, if you aren't quite familiar with the Assassin's Creed franchise, which I imagine probably most of you are, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood is the sequel to Assassin's Creed 2, which is one of the most loved games in the entire franchise. It's the beginning of Ezio's storyline. The game itself is an incredible standalone, and it is a game that I thoroughly enjoyed. The storyline was fantastic, the setting was fantastic, the gameplay was fantastic, and so I went into Assassin's Creed Brotherhood with quite high expectations, and so that is what we are talking through today. What were my thoughts on playing a 16-year-old Assassin's Creed for the very first time? So, getting started, what are some of the things that I enjoyed with Assassin's Creed Brotherhood? First up has got to be its scenery. Now, with all Assassin's Creed games, the scenery, the setting is just fantastic. So we jump into Assassin's Creed Brotherhood back in Rome. Now, in number 2, we do visit Rome very briefly, but we are back in Brotherhood. Now, I will say, what a beautiful setting. They absolutely nailed it. It felt alive. It was incredible to see all the landmarks. A special moment for me was actually seeing the Colosseum for the very first time and then being able to just climb it with no limits. And I think that stands out for all the other landmarks as well. The setting had so much to offer. It felt like a bustling city. It adapted to missions that we did and evolved. And that is something that I love about all Assassin's Creed games. I really enjoyed the parkour in this Assassin's Creed. I felt Rome was a perfect example of a setting that just flowed really well. I found myself choosing to climb the tops of buildings, but also choosing to run through the streets instead. And this is something that I maybe didn't lean as much towards in Assassin's Creed 2. I did find myself just choosing to go through rooftops because it was the fastest option. Whereas I feel with Brotherhood, I did vary between how I would choose to travel. And that's not to say because the parkour was bad, but actually it all just flowed really well, and I found myself moving from the floor to the roofs a lot more often than previously. The second thing that I really enjoyed about playing Assassin's Creed Brotherhood was the overall game mechanics. So if anyone isn't too familiar with the additions in Brotherhood, we actually gained the Brotherhood system where they introduced having apprentices come along into your story. I felt this was really fun. It definitely felt different, and it definitely took me a minute to get used to the actual mechanics and also remembering to bring those guys out. But once I did manage to remember to do this, and when I did manage to do it at the right time, it made things a whole lot more fun and also made things feel a lot easier than usual. Now, for some people, some diehard fans, that might be a downside. You might think that being able to bring extra assassins into fights would be a cop-out almost, but for someone who isn't a diehard Assassin's Creed fan, for someone who is just very much a casual player, I really enjoyed being able to bring people out. I thought it was a really cool mechanic. I thought the way they can enter into combat was really fun as well, and particularly missions began to feel a lot more easier as well, especially if there was an element of the mission where I was meant to be stealthy, I wasn't meant to be detected. Being able to rely on other assassins to help aid me, I personally found really helpful and exciting addition to the franchise so far. And it's also worth saying as well, that added a whole extra bit of content into the game, which again just meant there was some extra fun side quests. I particularly like the fact that although you just gained assassins, there was an element of you having to level them up, which again just felt different and something new. The third thing that I really enjoyed about Assassin's Creed Brotherhood was the implementation of the crossbow. The crossbow felt easy to use, it felt enjoyable, it again made things feel so much easier, it was easier to be stealthier. Overall, I think it was a fantastic addition. Now, this does come with a slight caveat that I did feel the crossbow, because it was so overpowered, because it was so fun to use, it did take away from some of the other weapons that were available in previous games. A great example of this for me personally was the throwing knife. This is something that I feel like I heavily relied on in number 2, but didn't really touch at all in Brotherhood. And I think that came down to the fact that, one, it felt like it did no damage, and I'm not sure if that is a universal experience or just me, but I also felt that it didn't throw as far either. And so for me, because it didn't do as much damage, because it took a lot more throws, it made me become detected a lot more often. I found myself just relying on the crossbow to do things a lot more stealthily. And I also saw that across some other weapons like the poison. Again, I didn't use smoke bombs probably as often as I maybe would have if the crossbow didn't exist. But overall, I don't think that takes away from the fact that the crossbow was a really fun weapon to use in this game, and it definitely made it feel different from its predecessor, which again, I think is really nice. The fourth thing that I really enjoyed in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood was the continuation of Ezio's storyline. Ezio is one of my favourite characters I think I've ever played in a game before, so it was great to be back in his shoes. I also want to say that the ending to this game was so unexpected. I actually was able to play the ending through with my friend who was a die-hard Assassin's Creed fan, and she managed to watch my reaction live, which was just fantastic. Yeah, I just really wasn't expecting that. It took me off guard, and I think that was what I was expecting more throughout the entire game, which wasn't quite the case, and we will touch on that when I talk about maybe the things that I didn't love about this game too much. But overall, I think the storyline was a good continuation of the last game that we played, and again, it's just good to play Ezio, and I don't think any of us can complain about that. I also want to do a couple of shout outs about other things that I did enjoy in the game, which aren't necessarily as big as the other things that I mentioned. The first one being the fact that this game implemented fast travel. I'm sure there are people out there who weren't a fan that this game implemented fast travel. However, I personally found that it was a great feature. It made traveling different places a lot more efficient, which for me, again, as a casual player, felt good, felt natural, and it felt a lot more enjoyable to move from mission to mission. Another thing that I again really enjoyed in this game was the kill chain feature, and I know this is probably a little bit of a controversial one, but again, as a casual player, being able to have those quite impressive animations, being able to wipe through crowds of enemies in quite a short span of time, just made it feel and flow really well. I felt good. I felt like I was doing a good job. So again, big thumbs up for implementing that feature in this game. So the moment you have all waited for are the things that I didn't like in Brotherhood. So we're going to come back to the storyline. Unfortunately, this game felt a little bit boring at times with its storyline. Now, I know I mentioned it's an Ezio storyline, and I think that's probably why I did enjoy the game as much as I did. Had Ezio not been a major part in this game, I don't think I probably would have enjoyed it as much. Now, the reason I say this is a lot of the missions and a lot of the storyline kind of felt similar throughout the entire game. It felt like we were moving from one Borgia to another Borgia and just consistently doing the same mission for a different person. And this leads me on to pretty much the next thing, which is that the setting did start to get quite familiar and started to feel quite old, quite fast. Now, what I mean by this is Rome was exciting to be in as a place. However, the design of this place started to feel a lot like we were back in Florence or the same places in Assassin's Creed 2. Now, I'm not sure if this is because I played these games back to back that I really started to notice this, but I think just the colour scheme, the graphic design, it all felt similar. It all felt like I'd been here and I'd done that, and that started to feel old quite fast. So that was probably one of my major downfalls of this game, is that it just felt too familiar. And I think the next thing kind of carries on from that as well, was the fact that there were less places to travel. If we think the predecessor had lots of different places that we could pick from, we had Florence, we had Venice, we had Tuscany, there were lots of different places that gave us a different feel. With this game, we only really had Rome, and I think that was a big limitation to this game. Yes, there were different places that we did explore at times, but they were very mission specific, so once you had completed that mission, you didn't actually get to go back there at all. A great example of this was towards the end of the storyline. You visit a kind of mansion and there's like garden parkour part, and I really enjoyed this. I felt like I was actually in a different place, and that's probably one of the highlights again within this playthrough. But I didn't feel like we had many opportunities to have that. And for me, this is one of the biggest downsides to this game. And I think the last thing that I want to speak about was the fact that this game was a standalone release. Yes, it was a sequel to the previous game, however, this was its own huge release. It was the next Assassin's Creed, and for me, it just felt a little bit lackluster. I think I would have liked more from a game that was supposed to be the next big Assassin's Creed, and it definitely felt like I just picked up an expansion pack for the previous game. And so, although my experience playing this game was really fun, and again, I enjoyed Assassin's Creed 2, so it wasn't hard to enjoy this game either. I just think as a standalone it was quite weak, and so I do find it difficult to see why it is maybe praised as much as it has been. But I can imagine and I can see that if this was the next big Assassin's Creed, that people would really enjoy this game. But I think for myself, because this is my first playthrough and I know there is more to come, that was a huge barrier for me to being able to love this game maybe as much as I'd hoped. And the last thing I want to mention as well is that at times there were some really frustrating missions. So a good example of this was a mission that required you to use the assassins to be able to kill off some guards and advance your army further. I kept running into a problem pretty early on into that mission where I would call in my assassins, but I would get desynchronized because I would be detected, and it did lead to a lot of rage quit moments. I'm not sure if that is an issue that most other people experienced. I know that I actually did Google it at the time, and there were some Reddit posts that did mention this, and some people had similar experiences. And I think overall, the missions at times could be really frustrating. For example, missions where it was this instant desynchronization if you were detected. However, it became very, very satisfying once I was able to come back and complete this mission. So although at the time probably very frustrating, I do think that it did lead to more satisfying moments when I was able to complete those tasks. So that's it. That is my overall opinion of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. I think as a game it is extremely enjoyable. It did not feel like a standalone Assassin's Creed. It very much felt like an extension to Assassin's Creed 2. But I did really like the new features that they implemented, so things like the crossbow, things like the Brotherhood system. They did make the game feel different and new. And so with that in mind, would I recommend this game in 2026? Well, the answer is yeah. If you're a fan of Assassin's Creed, if you're a fan of Ezio, then I would absolutely recommend you to play through this game. I think one, it is key to the storyline. Also, I think it does have a lot to offer despite some of the flaws within it. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. What was your experience playing Assassin's Creed Brotherhood? Did you play it back when it came out initially, or are you like me and have you just played it for the first time now? And if you guys did enjoy today's video, make sure you like and subscribe. And if you are interested in watching me play through some of these games live, you can always check me out on twitch.tv/DoggleYT. But that's it from me, guys. I hope you did enjoy, and I'll catch you all in the next one.